Good afternoon from Paris. I'm Stamenka Uvalić-Trumbić, and I'm talking for the Memory and Future Club of the Association of Former UNESCO staff members. Ever since the results of the elections in the US have been announced in November, there were new hopes for the return of the US to multilateralism and diplomacy around the world. And just a few days after the inauguration of the Biden Harris administration, announcements have been made that the US is returning to the Paris Climate Agreement and to WHO. And a number of US-based NGOs and organizations are urging this new administration to return to UNESCO. The club Memory and Future is conducting a few interviews to raise awareness about this issue, and this interview is a second one of the kind. The second interview is being conducted with Dr. Judith Eaton, President Emeritus of the US-based Council for Higher Education Accreditation, who has contributed to UNESCO programs for over 20 years. Before working in this council, she was also chancellor of a state system, president of two community colleges, faculty member at the university and at the community college. She has broadly published a lot of publications and has collaborated broadly with the international community. So let me start this interview by asking Dr. Eaton, in her view, what were the benefits of this long cooperation with UNESCO that she carried out for the US citizens and the US academic community? Over to you, Judith.
Thank you, Stamenka. Thank you and UNESCO for inviting me to this interview. I very much appreciate it. The United States has a couple unusual features about what we do in higher education and quality assurance. And let me just remind all of us about them as we start our discussion. First, reminding all of us that the United States higher education community is highly decentralized and highly diverse, with thousands of institutions that are self-governing as opposed to an overarching national system. Second, when it comes to quality assurance, in the United States, we call that accreditation, but don't want people to be misled. Accreditation to us means what quality assurance, the phrase, means in many other countries, maintaining quality and improving quality. So with that, there are any number of ways in which the US and accreditation has benefited from work with UNESCO over the years. UNESCO has been a vital link to us here in the United States, a vital link to the international community, communication, engagement, relationships. Having a relationship with UNESCO enabled us to share and test what we were trying to do in the United States, examining our practice in an international context. And we were able to build partnerships, whether it's student exchange, sharing research, teaching and learning, answering the oh so important question, what is quality in higher education? And we in the US got better at what we did, thanks to our engagement with UNESCO. As you well know, Stamenka, because you were a major leader in the establishment of the Council for Higher Education Accreditation Quality Assurance Group in 2012, that organization, which I led for 23 years, is the only national organization, non-governmental in the United States, that is devoted solely to quality assurance and accreditation. And we were able to build this international arm. We had a number of projects with UNESCO that were vitally important, and I'll just mention several of them. We shared work on degree mills and creating awareness about degree mills and creating protections for students about degree mills with publications, with work in various governments around the world to help get legislation to protect students. We did work on alternative credentials, workforce development, certificates, badges. That has been very, very useful, and especially now in the era of digital credentials. We did a major piece of work on academic corruption, how to stop it, how to know it, where to protect higher education and students in the future. We put out a set of international quality principles to which our colleagues in many countries signed on, making a shared commitment about how we pursue quality and quality improvement in the future. I can go on and on, but all of these things were part of working with UNESCO over the years.
Thank you very much, Judith. Similarly, what could you tell us from your perspective were the benefits of, for UNESCO, of the US involvement?
UNESCO, of course, since its inception, has always been a very important organization. If I may, I still think that the United States being part of UNESCO was a signal of the strength and value of the organization. I also think that we brought to UNESCO the benefit of so much experience, especially in quality assurance. We know that the US accreditation effort is more than 100 years old, probably the oldest formalization of quality assurance in higher education in the world. So we were able to serve in many ways as a model of what you might do, but also learn from our mistakes over the years. I believe UNESCO also benefited because a good many UNESCO members wanted to engage with the US, and UNESCO provided a forum for doing that.
Thank you, Judith. Do you see a role for the US now in the future in contributing to the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals in higher education, in particular to SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4? This goal aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all. And unlike the 2005 EFA goals, it gives higher education a prominent role by calling on the international community to assure by 2030 equal access for all to affordable quality higher education.
Stamenka, emphatically yes. You know, I recall several years ago, and I think it was in Bangkok, where one of your former colleagues spoke about the future work of UNESCO. And in that speech, he talked about social accountability being the primary responsibility of higher education for the future. And that framework, that set the stage, that articulated the value on which the SDGs would be based, and especially SDG 4. Right now, as you know, the United States is going through a very, very difficult time. We have been going through a difficult time, and I'm not talking about politics here. I'm talking about issues around race, social justice, equity, equality, diversity. And it is difficult for us. It is essential that we examine ourselves and improve our society. And that which the SDGs is promoting, and again, particularly SDG 4, can be of enormous assistance to us. And again, I think that we can share what we learn as well. The United States situation has a primary focus on race, and I'm aware that there is not quite the same emphasis, at least in some places around the world. But nonetheless, I think that we can all work together in furthering a social accountability agenda for higher education.
One more question, or two more questions, Judith. UNESCO is planning a third World Conference on Higher Education in fall 2021. We hope it's going to happen, despite that the situation around the world will be good enough to have a proper meeting. The conference will have the Agenda 2030 as an overall framework, but will also focus on the disruption caused by the pandemic and innovative ways to respond to it. These post-pandemic challenges for higher education and quality assurance were also the topic of a series of CHEA webinars in spring 2020. What were the main takeaways from these webinars, and could they contribute to UNESCO's global agenda for the future of higher education?
Well, first, Stamenka, I remember the 2009 conference really, really well. I remember the now First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, presented at that conference and gave a very important speech about US higher education and especially community colleges. The community college concept has been important to a number of countries around the world, not copying it, but picking up some of the ideas and applying it to individual societies. So Dr. Biden played a very valuable and important role in the 2009 conference. Talking about the 2021 conference, and let's hope that we can all be together in person for that event, and reflecting on the webinars, three topics that at least I would like to see at the conference. One, academic freedom and institutional autonomy. The vital importance of both of those things, no matter how much higher education and quality assurance changes, and how higher education, and especially from my perspective, how quality assurance can provide leadership with regard to academic freedom and institutional autonomy. And I mention the two things together because I think each is essential to the other. It is very hard to have academic freedom without institutional autonomy, and institutional autonomy has the obligation to preserve and protect academic freedom. A second area that we covered in the webinar was the need for continued and perhaps even greater creativity and flexibility in higher education and quality assurance. Responding to the pandemic, yes, and I take my hat off to higher education and quality assurance in many, many countries, how quickly we moved to keep education moving for millions and millions of students in spite of the pandemic. But that flexibility and that creativity we showed or have shown or are showing during the pandemic, we need to sustain and build. We're going to need post-pandemic enormous flexibility and creativity and patience, because higher education, teaching and learning, our approach to student success our commitment to quality, all of this is shifting some. So how do we look at what's happening in higher education and quality assurance be a partner with colleges and universities around the world to do the best job we can for students in the future? And I'm talking specifically, Stamenka, about the expanded role of digital learning and how many more students will use remote learning, how to make remote learning as successful as possible. We all know there have been ups and downs. So the creativity and flexibility of higher ed. And third, what about our international community in higher education and quality assurance? By and large, we've conducted the business of our international community by having a lot of meetings in a lot of places around the world, and a whole lot of us traveling a whole lot. And while we've complained about the flights and the hotels from time to time, we very much enjoyed being together. The exchanges were vibrant, they were vital. We learned from one another. We all gained so much. I'm not sure that we're going to go back to that same kind of travel-based, in-person, international community. So how do we want to shape the international community of higher ed and quality assurance of the future? Are we going to be relying, as we are now, more and more on remote connection? How do we sustain a high level of engagement with each other? How do we stay personally connected as we work together? What do we want that international community to be in the future? So 3 very meaty things I hope that the World Conference will address: academic freedom and institutional autonomy, creativity and flexibility in our work, and reshaping, reinventing the international community in which we all live.
Thank you, Judith. Any concluding remarks for the future of US UNESCO cooperation in higher education?
Yeah, just a few things, and I'm speaking, Stamenka, only for myself here. I want to stress that. But there is a lot of interest in the US higher education and quality assurance communities about international engagement. And I believe, talking to colleagues on this side of the Atlantic, that they would welcome re-engagement with UNESCO, just as they are welcoming some of the immediate changes here and I'm in Washington, D.C. with a new administration about relaxing some of the restrictions on international travel and international students, things that are happening right now. People see UNESCO as central to our international engagement. I've already mentioned this, and there's a lot of hope, and we will be speaking out that the new administration will begin to renew the United States participation in UNESCO. Stamenka, thank you very much again for having me for this interview. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much to you, Judith, for this interesting conversation we had. And I really hope to see you in Paris very soon during this year. Thank you, Judith, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.